Okay, welcome everyone. This is the fifth meeting of the Government Transition Advisory Committee's Districts and Council Operations Subcommittee. Today is Thursday, February 29th, coolly, and we will be here from 11:30 to 12:45. My name is Julia Meyer. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Engagement and Community Participation Manager for the transition. Our co-chairs, Jose and Juliet, will facilitate today's meeting. Next slide, please. Before we get started, I just want to go over some meeting logistics. This meeting is being live streamed on YouTube. A recording of the meeting will be posted on the city's transition website under past meetings and events. For today's meeting, we have closed captioning available. To access closed captioning, please click on the CC button on the bottom of your screen. For committee members, please take this moment to change your chat settings to everyone so that folks in attendance can see the chat. And please remember that the chat is part of the public meeting record. For community members listening in, we have the Zoom Q&A feature available. You can submit questions or comments through the Q&A button. We may not answer all of your questions live in the meeting, but we do read them and they also become part of the public meeting record. At today's meeting, we're not taking verbal public comment, but you can submit public comment at any time by calling 311, emailing us at transition@portlandoregon.gov, or submitting public comment online through the Transitions webpage. If you do want to give verbal public comment, you can sign up now to do it at the next meeting of the Government Transition Advisory Committee, which is on March 13th at 6 p.m. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Juliet to review today's agenda.
Good morning, everyone. Today's agenda includes subcommittee business and a continuation of our discussion from last week on district offices and what, if any, recommendations we want to make to the GTAC for its consideration at the March 13th GTAC meeting. Before we adjourn our meeting today, we will agree to next steps. Next slide, please. Joe is unable to attend today's meeting. Otherwise, we expect full attendance. Joe also sent his thoughts ahead of time, and we can bring those into the meeting at the appropriate point. We need to approve the February 22nd meeting summary. Does anyone have any proposed revisions before I take a motion to approve those? I'm just trying to see everyone. If not, I'll take a motion to approve. Motion by Terry.
Second.
Second, Amy. Discussion? All right. How about a show of hands to approve the February 22nd meeting summary? Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Looks good. Thank you for that. Next slide, please. The working agreements state as follows. 1, in discussions, challenge ideas rather than individuals and offer constructive suggestions. 2, approach different opinions with curiosity and seek to understand. 3, keep the needs and concerns of the local community and the larger region at the forefront of the work. 4, arrive on time and prepare to the best of your ability. Let the group know if you are unable to attend a meeting, and the co-chairs will aim to incorporate tools for breathers. 5, keep multitasking to a minimum. 6, keep focus on the objectives of the meetings. Use the co-chairs to note additional topics for discussion by submitting topics in writing via email before the meeting. Next slide, please. 7, honor the decisions of the group. 8, contribute to the overall success of the group by finding ways to participate that best meets your needs. 9, step up and step back. Collectively work to ensure that every member who wants to be heard is heard. 10, embrace conflict and work with your fellow committee members and staff to find ways to give each other feedback. The co-chairs will aim to incorporate various feedback tools. And 11, use I statements. Next slide, please. And I think I hand it over to Jose at this point.
Thank you, Juliet. At our subcommittee meeting last week, we discussed district offices. And if GTAC wants to make a recommendation related to district offices, we must do so at the March 13th meeting. So today's meeting is really for us to decide if we want to make a recommendation to GTAC for its consideration. Next slide, please. Based on our discussion last week, we proposed 4 options for the group to consider. These options aren't meant to be exhaustive, but rather a starting place. We can certainly edit or add to these options. Option 1 requires really no actions because we decide we support the current council resolution requiring staff to identify 4 offices available no later than January 1st, 2025. Per the resolution, the offices must provide for room for 8 total staff per district, each with a designated desk and workstation, room to meet with the general public on a routine basis, a welcoming and accessible environment, proximity to public transit, wireless connectivity, secured entry and egress, and the existence of or ability to install appropriate signage and wayfinding. Facilities initial estimates are about $2 million for the 4 locations. There is currently no budget for this, but facilities could submit a late decision package for it, and then council would decide whether to allocate the money. Option 2 is the subcommittee feeling that the resolution is premature and recommends leaving the final decision on permanent in-district offices to the new council. In the meantime, providing low-fi pop-up in-district offices by January 1st, 2025, investigating a public engagement effort that develops a recommendation to council no later than April 2025, and actively considering in-district facility access for the east side, time to optimize resources, and of course, sharing subcommittee research with the council. Option 3 is the subcommittee still feeling the resolution is premature, but still leaving the final decision on permanent in-district offices to the new council. This time, though, in the meantime, providing a space that can accommodate all 12 counselors and their staff in East Portland by January 1st, 2025. Then also investing in a public engagement effort that results in recommendation to council no later than April 2025, and sharing subcommittee research with the council. Now, if option 2 and 3 and none of the first 3 options are what we decide on, option 4 is to be voted on. The subcommittee then will share the research and the diversity of its opinions with the council, but will state that we have not landed on an actual opinion. We do want to begin with a temper check to see where folks are, so we can focus our conversation in the right places, so that if no one prefers a certain option, then we really won't take much time to discuss it. If you express interest in one option, that doesn't mean you fully support that in its current iteration, but it is the one you're more attracted to. So raise your hand if you, oh wait, before we do that, Amy, do you have a question?
Oh, I just wanted to acknowledge Maddie's document that she shared with us, that it had some pretty specific recommendations to the council that I think we should acknowledge as like a 4th option, or like include in the discussion.
Amy, if I may, I think that document is kind of a version of option 2. So if/when we have a discussion about option 2, I think Maddie's prepared to kind of walk us through that document, if that's okay. Thanks.
And I would also just note, coming out of the last meeting, I was unaware of this slide, and so I didn't know if anybody had synthesized the findings or a path forward. And so I was just trying to be supportive of, here's an approach that might work. And sent that to Julia this morning for distribution, and then she sent back this. So I I was unaware of these four when I crafted that and sent it, but it is actually very similar to what I see in option 2. So just to provide some context on that memo, that's how that evolved and why it was sent. But we are here to facilitate discussion of really any of the 4 options, because I think we could offer insight on cost, risks, timing for any of those.
Okay, great. Okay, so let's see. Raise your hand if you most like option 1, supporting the resolution as is. I am seeing no hands. So that will. Okay, so option 2, recommending an alternate to the resolution that leaves the final decision on permanency of district offices to the new council, but in the meantime, providing low-fi pop-up district offices by January 1st, 2025. Who prefers this option?
Yeah.
I'm voting for, this is Joe's preference.
Yeah, yeah, with discussion, of course, two.
Oh, yes, everything will be discussed. This is just to see discussion. Okay, so there's a number of votes for this, 5. Okay, option 3, also leaving the decision to the future council, but in the meantime, providing a space that can accommodate all 12 councilors and their staff, but in East Portland on January 1st, 2025. So it'd be 1 additional space. There's a couple for these. Okay. And then raise your hand if you most like option 4, sharing our research and diversity of opinions, but not landing on an opinion. There's 1.
I'm splitting my vote at the moment.
Okay, so we'll definitely talk to number 4 if we can't get a majority opinion on any of an option 2 and 3. We won't talk about option 1 because no one raised their hand. But I'll leave it to Juliet to do the discussion just on option 2 and option 3. Thank you.
Thanks, Jose. So I will take comments on these options. I have a couple comments and questions myself, but I'll save those till the end in case someone else covers them first. So let's just talk about what we voted for and why. Let's start with that. And we'll go with Terry and then Juanita.
Thanks for this meeting and thanks for the chance to discuss it. Special thanks to Maddie's document that came in this morning. I would say that I agree 100% with that document's perspectives and where we land on things and what GTAC is thinking, because I think it's exactly right. I still think that there needs to be more engagement on what these offices do and what the expectations are, and that should be done before we make decisions like this. That said, I think option 2 is the best of the options that are remaining. I would take the Maddie's document and amend it a little bit. So if we get to that point, I'll explain what I'm thinking there. But that's where I am at the moment. I still think it would be okay to not decide and let the new council decide after some engagement. That's where I was last week. This week I'm 2-ish.
Okay, in the interest of time, let's talk about option 2 first, and then if there are comments on other options, we'll go to those if time permits. So Juanita.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I like option 2 also. And the only questions I have is when we talking about the space, I think when we're talking about providing low 5 access and pop-up and district offices, I think that I like that piece because it won't be so expensive, but also if we're not sure yet about having 8 staff members in each of the districts, can we take that out of the requirements to do since we're going to leave the decision until the new council is aboard, that will facilitate the finding of the space. I think to me, the main concern would be finding a space where a large number of people can meet in those offices. So that would be one of the pieces that I don't know why we keep saying that we need to find 4 district offices with 8 staff if that decision is not being made yet. In terms of staffing. The second one is I would like to say that we need to consider those coalitions and neighborhood associations as to what role can they play as we talk about these district offices that are going to be kind of set in a temporary manner until the new council takes over. So those will be my 2 questions or 2 considerations that I wanted to point out. Thank you.
Thank you, Juanita. Julia, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I have Joe's perspective to share. So, like I mentioned, he supports option 2, but he thinks that it should be revised to say that at minimum, the offices should provide 2 private hoteling workspaces and a private meeting space that can accommodate 6 people, such as 1 counselor, 1 staff, and 4 guests. Larger gatherings will have to be held elsewhere. And then he proposes 1 substantive change, which is I don't believe that a lo-fi pop-up office is needed in District 4. We should recommend temporary offices only in Districts 1, 2, and 3. Thank you.
All right, are there any other comments on option 2? Jose?
I did want to make comments, but before I did, because some of them relate to what Maddie wrote, did we want to give a chance for Maddie to kind of go over her proposal? Because unless everyone feels they're very comfortable with it.
Let's finish the questions first, and then she'll know more what to highlight as she reviews her document. But I think that's a good idea, Jose. Let's hear from Amy and Terry. Is your hand still up or again? Amy and then Terry.
Well, I also just wanted to add that I also support Maddie's kind of take on things. I think she did a really good job of summarizing the conversation and then also kind of laying out what a recommendation to council could really look like. I don't know, do you guys see that as like the same as 2, or is this like a totally separate option? Like if we were to vote in total, could we like mush those 2 things together, or like just from a procedural perspective? Jose or Julia?
I think that it is comparable to option 2.
So we see these as the same thing. Basically, if we voted for 2, we would just go in. Okay.
Do you concur with that, Maddie?
And,
Okay.
and the options we proposed are just a framework. So the final thing we vote on doesn't have to exactly be what we said was option 2 or exactly be Maddie's. It'll be we'll vote that we like one of them more, and then we'll figure out how to flesh that out to be exactly what we sent to GTAC.
Like today we're voting to build consensus around what we're going to recommend to GTAC, which will ultimately recommend to council. Got it.
Okay, Terry, you're back up to bat.
Great. Just a quick comment on Joe's comment, and so he's not here to defend it, so it's perfectly fair. The reasoning behind the District 4 offices is that office space outside of City Hall helps with confidentiality and privacy concerns for these meetings in spaces that are not City Hall and so visible. That's the reason to have them elsewhere from City Hall. That's the argument that I've heard, and I kind of believe it. So there you go.
All right, other comments about option 2 before I ask my question about it, Jose?
First, I agree with Joe that we don't need a District 4 office. I think the confidentiality argument is I don't buy any arguments because in district offices was never on the table. We've never had offices outside of City Hall, so we've never had that be an issue. So and all the councilors will have access to City Hall, because I've also heard that if you have District 4 offices always in City Hall, then they have more access, so it's not equitable. But everyone has access to City Hall, so everyone could be there whenever they want. So that is my thing. I think if we do go with option 2, cutting a fourth the cost off by not having 2 offices in District 4, because they'd essentially have 2 offices, would probably be better. Also, a big concern I have with Maddie's proposal, and I guess with this proposal in general, is that we're proposing no security. And the counselors that get the most security threats are the counselors of color. In the past, Joan Hardesty, like, those are the people that get shot at. She got shot at 9 times in her office. Those are the people we're saying, well, your security is fine. It's fine that we don't care about, because the white counselors haven't had that issue. So that is something I've considered a lot. Like a lot of the people running now are very diverse, and I'm afraid that there are crazy people out there that tend to target people of color. And by saying security is less important, we're not saying that, but ultimately we are saying your security is less important, because they're the ones that benefit the most from it.
Thank you, Jose. Zach?
I've been kind of just observing the conversation, so I apologize for not speaking up earlier, but I do think that, you know, Jose's point about security is important. I do think that there's reason for maybe being broader and understanding what access means. In Terry's comment, you know, about having access to counselors that is outside of City Hall. Although I will say, you know, there's maybe those things come in conflict, like the level of security that's required to have what Jose is concerned about, and having there being kind of low barrier access, if you will, or I don't know, maybe that's a misrepresentation of what you're thinking of, Terry. That's something that we need to maybe wrestle with. And it brings me back to like the main goal of this, right? It's hopefully providing better access. What I thought it was is providing better access from kind of a transit and time to actually physically be present with the counselor than it is about kind of the myriad of other considerations that have been discussed. And I ultimately voted for 2 in the sense that we're talking about like low cost options, which I almost feel like is analogous, hopefully, to not really being a full-fledged like thing that Maddie and facilities has to develop, but like just leveraging district offices in a kind of ad hoc way. And if that's not on the table, if the security concern is large enough, I actually would think more along the lines of option 3, because it does have much more of a kind of access orientation, and is just kind of focusing in and more efficient with the resources that we might be proposing.
Thanks, Zach. Any more questions about option or comments about option 2? If not, I will ask a question, Maddie. So if we have lo-fi offices with less security than was originally envisioned for district offices, what is the liability to the city of that?
That's a great question. I mean, I think the same question exists if we had for example, council meetings held or public meetings held at gymnasiums, at community centers, etc. I'll just give you my lens into security issues. I don't think it's quite accurate to say that only communities of color are targeted. I do think Commissioner Hardesty in particular was targeted, but in recent times, those security issues seem to be broadly spread over everybody. And it seems to be almost open season a little bit on anybody really in offices as well as staff. So, I think that was our original concern, as I do think the original vision around this was this sort of lo-fi pop-up idea. And we were trying to express to council back in October, appreciate the sentiment, but I am also seeing that that is not the era that we're living in anymore. And so we had a concern that these counselors will come into spaces that were lo-fi and pop up and immediately say, this isn't working. I need higher levels of security support, and that the city would agree that there was a gap there that we hadn't planned for, and that it would take us a really long time to be responsive to that, because the issue of fiber is a driving factor in whether or not you have security cameras, badge access control, et cetera. And that fiber is a long lead item. It's over a year. So we are the ones who made this original recommendation and shaped the resolution in the way that it was written, because we said we don't want to get entrapped in a situation in which we're offering people up a lo-fi option, but it doesn't feel safe, or it actually isn't safe, or both. And so we added these conditions, knowing, and I think fairly cautioning, that it was likely going to be very expensive. And if you're going to drop this expense, wouldn't you want to do that along with a pretty robust programming effort that was connected to the community? So I think what's been difficult for folks is seeing the price tag of that and for real, and saying, well, do we want to go this fast to spend this amount of money, or do we want to pause? So essentially what I sent is what I think everybody originally thought would be. And I guess what I'm trying to do is protect the city a little bit, and our own organization in BTS, by calling out very explicitly in that there will not be security support. And it's an either or. You can either spend a lot of money to have that, or you cannot spend that money, but then you can't expect to have it. And so just by being explicit, I'm hoping at the very least that we can limit some liability within that.
And so when we're talking about security, are we talking just about personal security or also data security?
There's both. There are means to protect data security, like a VPN network that we use. But a lot of it, I think, has to do, if you don't have the fiber connection, and that can either be trenched or hung fiber, or it can be a walled off fiber access that happens through Comcast, and that is a whole investigatory process there to see if that's available. Really, the issue is by not being on that high capacity fiber network, you can't get security cameras, and you can't get the badge access control that you would have downtown. You also cannot host very effective like broadcast level meetings. So for example, you couldn't broadcast a community meeting from your district office because you wouldn't have the appropriate bandwidth to do that. So the security and technology pieces are really technical and really expensive. The other form of security that's also deployed, and this is happening right now with the current commissioners, are security details. So the mayor's ended up with a security detail for several years because of the number of things that happened to him. Other commissioners have requested security details because of what's happening to them. And so what we had rolled into the original pricing for the fully built out option was essentially pretty ready access to security details, either roving or dedicated or there for community meetings, to help support not just at the technical level, but kind of almost like a bodyguard, basically.
Okay, thank you for explaining that. Juanita.
Yeah, I was just going to comment. Thank you so much for that feedback, Mari. I guess I was thinking that we have all of these different ideas about how these district offices are going to operate. And to me, I have never thought that they would be used to have a whole city council meeting in one of these district offices. I'm thinking more, and this is just my thinking and the way I was looking into the way we're structuring this system. To me, the offices, the district offices are going to be a place for the district, for the councilors to meet with whatever infrastructure we're going to recommend to the city to be developed and to do part of the community engagement, which is really critical from the grassroots level, to trying to reach the people who don't go all the time to the city council meetings in downtown Portland. So to me, that's that. So no, it is not, or to have a team of 8 people placed in those offices in a permanent basis, because that's really a waste of money. And I mean, are they really going to be there 5 days a week, 8 people doing what? So to me, I also think that we need to clarify that what is what we are talking about, district offices, and how they're going to be utilized. Is it going to be a place of reunion for that district community, the ones who are really involved, like neighborhood associations, coalitions, whatever the structure we end up in that area, to meet and to ensure that the communication is taking place with that part of the city, is flowing, they have input about what's happening in areas like zoning or transportation or the streets, all of those issues. So I'm a little bit confused because I don't see what I'm hearing is like is almost like saving another 3 little city council offices. And I don't know, I would like to hear what people think about that, because I'm a little bit confused and I'm not so sure that we're very clear about what is the actual function of those spaces.
And I will say there's a formal term for that. What you're trying to understand is the buildings program. And that is, I think what we have been concerned about is that there is no clear program for these spaces. And there are many very divergent opinions about the program. Some people are looking at an East Side City Hall. Some people are looking at being able to just connect with people from the neighborhood periodically. Some people are talking about private offices. All of those are different programming discussions, and there's a lot of variation and diversity in the programming, implicit programming expectations. We're trying to figure out what target to shoot for. But there's very different costs associated with all of those because they're very different programs. That's an architectural process.
Yeah.
So what we've brought it all the way back to is like, what are the minimum requirements, right? But even still within that, the big differentiator is the expectation around security.
Yeah, well, I think that the issues about doing construction, I think is too premature. I mean, that is a process that is going to take maybe 1 or 2 years, because it really, I mean, you're talking about budget and I mean, it's really, if that's construction, new construction, I don't anticipate that. I'm more focused on doing, on maybe for us, maybe in that, I don't know, we can discuss that more, but we need to kind of decide how do we see those offices functioning and make those recommendations, that looking at that and given the time, then do more. And I'm sure this whole thing is going to evolve as the new council comes to work and the community start looking at how these offices are working. It will evolve. But to me, the most important thing is that we start with something in place that is, so we don't end up saying, well, we really don't need district offices at all, because we have to have those places where the local community are going to meet, and the community expects that.
Since we only have 40 more minutes left, I think I'll ask Maddie just to review her document with us, and that might address some of our questions.
Am I able to share a document on here? Or can somebody share it and I can go through it?
Probably Julia can allow you to share it.
You can share.
Hang on, I got about 9 documents open
I
here.
can also,
Would you be able to share it? I've got so many things open.
yeah, let me make it big for you here. Are y'all seeing that?
Yeah, so if you go up to the top, I tried to summarize the the research that you've done and that we've done. Then I tried to articulate under perspectives, the different perspectives that I had heard, which is that I think I heard many people are interested in more research. I think I heard, and bullet number 2 is kind of a proxy for your concerns, Jose, which is that issues do exist in certain communities and they need to be rectified. I did hear from many people in bullet 3 that the issues probably vary from district to district and potentially between different groups. And so that's where the research could assist. And then lastly, that there are also individuals who want to see the city at least hit the bare minimum of what was kind of promised in the voter pamphlet, understanding that there are even the bare minimum has very different costs depending on the security profile that you select. So going down to goals, I really tried to create some space that we do research. Bullet number 2, and this is again kind of trying to hit on your needs, Jose, is that the research that is conducted is getting to the root cause of what's wanted. Bullet number 3 is about, at least trying to align with the spirit of the voter pamphlet. And so what I recommended down below under proposed recommendation is that the GTAC recommend to council that it strike some language that we had put in there specifically to protect ourselves in case the council came in January 1st and what we had were just some pop-up spaces, and I'll use that term loosely. And if they arrived and they said, this is not meeting my expectation from a security or technology standpoint, we had wanted to be prepared and essentially have it meet their probably implicit expectations about that. And so we put this language in, but we put it in knowing that it was going to be really expensive. And I think that's what others have found as well. So what this does is it removes that programming language that at the bare minimum, it's a bare minimum program, but it creates a facility that would have the security profile that you would have downtown. And we recommend replacing it with what's in the second bullet, which is room for up to 8 staff total per district. I did read something in the comments from Joe about private offices. That's a driver of cost, so that would push you way higher. So this is essentially taking facilities as is. It's up to 8 staff per district, reasonably welcoming, close to public transit with some signage. And then I tried to explicitly call out the things that would not be there. And so that would be about upfront security or technology systems like cameras and audio AV systems, and daily ongoing staff support for security and technology issues, essentially that we're taking these sites as is, with only de minimis upgrades. So that's like signage and sort of used commercial furniture, because oddly, commercial furniture is also a huge driver of cost often in these projects. And then I recommend that it be capped at a certain amount of $150K upfront and $150K ongoing. And then it really finishes with this question about public engagement, which is, can we support the council? Can we support the more robust discussion of this by having a sort of third-party led engagement with the community that would talk about what the issues and needs are with regard to access and barriers? And then I would strongly encourage that if that kind of effort happened, that it happen in conjunction with a bureau sponsor. And I say that because while the charter transition team is very knowledgeable about charter transition, if you're trying to get on a different bus, which is really related to the having subject matter experts be there to talk about options, benefits, costs, timing, risks, the city's budget process, the city's budget timing, it's a bureau that would know that more so than, kind of an ad hoc team. And so we could be your partner in that to say, okay, well, here's a quick and dirty cost estimate, and here's what we would do if we want to advance this forward. So we could be your advocate in that space. So that's what I was proposing. And really, I want to acknowledge Jose's comments about underinvestment in the East Side generally. And I guess I'm concerned that a pop-up office, meaning a very, very lo-fi office, is not going to address all of that problem, right? And so is this a launch pad to talking about what East Side investment holistically looks like at the city? I'd rather deal with that problem than just having a stand-up office and we say that, oh, that hits it, you know, because I think it's a bigger issue than just this. So I'm trying to create some space to get an on-ramp to exploring that problem.
Thank you, Maddie, for reviewing that. Other comments or questions about option 2? Sorry, I can't see everybody right now. Terry.
Actually, I'd like to hear about option 3 real quick so that we can come, what I think is going to happen, we'll come back to Maddie's document and I'll have, if nobody else does, I'll have a motion on that. That's it.
Destiny.
I thought Terry was pushing forward for option 3. I'm just waiting patiently for that.
All right. So I'm sorry, Terry, were you going to talk more about option 3?
No, I just wanted to hear about it.
Oh, okay.
Because to me, it's fairly similar to option 2, except for some scope things that I don't understand. So that's all.
Yeah. So we, Julia and Amy and Jose and I kind of put these together. So I guess the difference is just that it would have put all the 12 counselors together on the east side, and then leave the rest of the decisions to the new council. But maybe Jose would like to comment on that because a lot of these ideas came from him.
Well, the whole idea behind having one building is that it minimizes the cost, right? Instead of doing 4 spaces, you do 1 space, and yes, you have to house more people in that same space, but it's not going to cost the same as if you have 4 separate spaces with, if you want to do like all the updates. I don't think we need the streaming right away and all that all those things, but security does seem like it's an important thing, especially if you were finding, like Maddie said, counselors are already asking for that security. So it makes me nervous to do like a no security office temporarily, and then instantly they all ask for security, and then those costs come right back into play anyway. But if you have one building that you have to secure, where everyone can be, and then you give them a choice of working out of either office, it doesn't have to be central, like in the middle of District 1. You could put a big building sort of by where 1, 3, and 2 all kind of join in one little spot. If you put a big space near there, it heightens the access for everyone. Everyone will then be close to one or the other, instead of the city hall is all the way on one side of the city. So up to a certain point, all of a sudden you're getting farther and farther away. But if you have one on either side of the city, there's always going to be one that's not that far. Yes, it's not as ideal as having a central district office in the middle of every district. I totally understand that. But I was trying to think of, if we don't have the money to do all this, and I was kind of going off Maddie saying that temporary and permanent is no different except for the length of the lease. So to me, I wasn't thinking about building a new thing. I was thinking we're going to spend the money for temporary places anyway. If we're going to do that, we could have a lot of things that we're leaving out with the lo-fi option, which I know we should change those terms, but we're leaving out with option 2. We can still have those with option 3, and still lower the cost, probably significantly. I guess I haven't priced it out, but I would assume that'd be a little cheaper at least. Maddie?
I'm sorry, I don't have a hand raise button, and I know people say it's there, but I've never found it, so I'm just raising my hand. Yeah, I think the security is still a big thing, right? And so essentially what you're talking about is, if we say we're going to spend up to X amount, and it could be 150K, which I proposed in my write-up, it could be a higher amount. You'd have to make that proposal to council. you're essentially proposing that all that money gets consolidated in that upgrade versus spread and peanut buttered over every district. Again, I would say the big differentiator is security, right? So 150K might be kind of a reasonable and neat investment for some tenant improvements and some furniture. It really depends on the site we find and where it is in proximity to city fiber or to a Comcast DMARC, in order to determine what the cost of even a centrally located facility will be. And I hope what I am explicitly teeing up is that if you advocate for funding to do community engagement, that you open up the conversation to what does East Side investment look like. And mostly what I want to avoid is giving you a hamburger when what you really need is a full meal, right? And I just don't know if 150,000 even is going to get you a full meal in terms of what East Side investment and engagement is looking like. So I'm trying to tee you up for something bigger that could be facilitated and built upon versus just saying, well, this is it, right? And that's what you get. Because even at 150K, it may not be enough for what you are, it may not meet the need. So I'm trying to figure out how to meet the most basic of needs possible while also teeing up a bigger conversation about what does East Side access look like.
Thank you, Maddie. So let's take some comments, and I'm going to start with you, Lori, because you had your hand up a while ago, and then we'll go Destiny, Amy, Juanita.
Thank you. I tried to put some comments in the chat, and I am just feeling like we start with the fact that most other cities don't have district offices. And now we're trying to quickly shoehorn an answer in. And what I see it as, we're either going to quickly provide an answer and invest in it because we don't have time, or the other option is spending the time to do the research, hiring somebody, partnering with somebody, not us doing it, but putting the money into doing the research to really understand what the need is. I don't think we should say we're never going to do anything, or that we should just wait for the new counselors to decide what they want. I think we should ask the community what they want, and that's where the priority should be, is putting the money towards figuring out what the solution is, particularly since nobody else has decided what the solution is in the country. So how we think that we're going to come up with the solution in the next, whatever the time frame is, pretty short here, that we haven't even talked to the community except for random inputs, I just think is really naive. So I guess 2, to me, I did vote for that one, but 2 just feels like checking the box. Yep, we did provide somewhere for them to go, which they could find that by going, to their local community center when they want to do a quick pop-up. So I think that it feels to me a waste of money and feels disingenuous to providing the need for the community.
Thanks, Lori. Destiny?
Thank you. I was in favor for option 3 because I think because of the life of the lease, I think it provides an interesting opportunity to potentially create a space where counselors can join together more in a centralized area. And it's a short time, one place investment. It's not long term, it's temporary. So I think that would be an interesting opportunity to see what that adds to our new government. I hear the concerns for security. I wonder if that way, if we had one space where counselors can meet with their staff with community members in a more Easter Portland area would be worthwhile, while we also continue to do community engagement efforts to find a proposal for more long-term ideas regarding offices and community engagement. That's where I was kind of sitting on that one. And I think it gets a lot more people who are running out into their community rather than being in central downtown. I think it's an opportunity to look into that while we actually identify, like Lori said, an actual response and idea of how are we going to make smart investments while also offering a secondary place. I think there was something else that I wanted to add on that, but I'm just leaning towards option 3 because I think it offers us more opportunities.
So as a time check, we have about 20 more minutes, so we can come back to you, Destiny, if you think of another point, but meanwhile, we'll go to Amy.
Yeah, just wanted to kind of add on to Lori's comment. I appreciated how you phrased that there's so much we kind of don't know. I'm just thinking back to the staffing conversation about how individual offices will even be staffed, like as far as what the programming will be. So there's going to be some kind of shared staff. So like there's so much, like that's just adding to the things that we don't know. We don't even know how the individual district offices are going to operate, like whether they are going to primarily be the output for constituency or constituent like issues, or if that's going to be the centralized district staff. There's so much like as far as thinking through what the programming would be that we've identified in other areas of our work that we don't know. That I just think that that's like an important aspect of the conversation in trying to like program things, like that's an important layer.
Hey, Juanita?
Yeah, really quickly, I just want to say that I agree with Lori's, comments. However, I think that we're putting like the horse before the cart. We're trying to I agree with making this decision. I think that if we can focus more on process, what is the process and what is the short-term goals and what are the long-term goals? And to me, the long-term goals is to engage the community enough that every district area will have a wonderful community center for the whole community, but that's long-term. And because I totally agree with Jose and with Destiny that the east side of the city really needs to be put attention to it because of the needs that have been neglected there. But again, if we can focus more on process rather than making final decisions on final recommendations, I have to say that I don't understand really. The other question would be, is it only the cost is the issue for trying not to move district offices designation? And I don't want to talk about construction, just designation. Is there any other issues other than cost for the city?
Maddie, do you want to comment on that?
I think the primary issue, well, I think there's two issues, and they're related. The first is lack of clarity about what the design program is. How are these spaces going to be used? What does the community need? And if we're going to spend any money, do we have the answer to those questions? So I don't know that and then that leads to the cost question, right? Which is there's sort of nothing. There's like a desk in a room. Then there's the initial step up to a secure desk that can do good hybrid meetings in a room. And then there's this step up to a third tier, which is a program, right? Which is, we know what that is and what it looks like. So I don't know that you can separate cost from program because they go together integrally. But right now, I would say the main barrier is that there is a cost, and should that cost be expended, not knowing what the program is.
Thank you.
Any other comments about that? We still have some time before we need to decide if we want to make a recommendation to GTAC. But if there are no other comments, sorry, I'm just going to my notes. If there are no other comments, we can consider a motion. Jose.
Yeah, I don't know if you're not seeing the hand raise on mine because it's a different color.
Sorry about that.
I want to acknowledge that I totally know that my comments are very east side focused. I am very active on the east side, and I find that it doesn't get a lot of loudness for our side often. I will say I agree with Lori, we need to engage more of the community, but I'm pretty sure you're going to get different answers on different parts of the city. Everyone cares about what they want. I actually have heard so much about this conversation. I feel like every neighborhood association meeting I've presented at, every group I've talked to, this is what they're talking about, whether or not the counselors will be in districts. One, the common engagement that is used is not attended by most people of these communities we try to target. They're the ones that don't go out to these common engagement efforts, or like we testify at City Hall or when we do listening sessions. they don't attend because they're used to the city not listening to them. So when you talk to them, what they want to see is their counselor in the district having lunch like every day. They want to see the dollars of that go downtown because they spend all their time downtown to stay in the community and not just go downtown. So I brought up like what kind of events would be good, and a lot of people just want their people around. They want to bump into them. Like some of them say, we never see our counselor until it becomes campaign season, and then they all of a sudden show up at like random special events because they've never seen them ever before. So they want their representatives to be among their people. And that's what I hear, and it's just, and I hear it often in Spanish. A lot of them don't say anything. I'm always getting asked like who's running that speaks Spanish. People want to be in community with their elected representatives more than we give them credit for, I think.
Thanks, Jose. Destiny?
For one of the reasons also that I really enjoyed option 3 is that now we are also, counselors are going to be navigating policy and like the city, not just within districts, but with partners. So neighborhoods have their own issues, but there's sections of the city that still might need movement building, coalition building, things like that. And so I think it's just interesting, option 3 in a temporary sense, to hear counselor feedback. This was the part I was missing, to hear counselor feedback on what they're experiencing, what their needs are, collectively working together, working closer to districts and communities in a more centralized space, to then identify in district offices what capacity, what that looks like even is, how community is engaging with them, how their staff is working together if it's shared. So I think in a temporary sense, in an initial starting investment, I think 3 just has the most opportunity to identify what programming is highlighting out of this, while offering, if it has to be low security, I would rather they be in a centralized community center than just going to coffees randomly or going to a church. That's just my opinion. And if we can't afford to have, guards and all that, but that was also the reasoning behind my option 3 of just more than just community as well.
Thank you, Destiny. Maddie, your real hand is fine for me.
Sorry. So District 1, I want to lay out just so you know what options we have so far. We found 3 potential rentable facilities. They're all at the edge of the district. I'm not a huge fan of them. I think I just don't like the way they feel and look. We also have found Civic Life has just expressed interest in the last week or two at moving out of a place called the Nick Fish Building, which is somewhat at the edge of the district, but it's there. Now it doesn't have certain things that you might want, like a large meeting space, for example. It's not on the network. That was actually one of the big frustrations, is they're waiting for the network to arrive. That's how long lead it is. They've been there over a year, I think. And then we did just find last week, and so our properties folks are looking at it, a site that Water Bureau apparently used, and we did not know that they had this asset. It's right in the middle of the district. It's called the Hazelwood Building, and right now it's empty. So our properties folks are going to photograph it this week or next week to try to understand what that would look like. So I do want to say, we are not abandoning the hunt. I mean, we were trying to find things that could work. And then the question would be, if we find the thing, to what level is it taken up to meet expectations? And what does that cost? So District 1 was by far the hardest, but we are finding some options. I also put into the chat the things that from our standpoint tend to drive up cost the most, and they're, people will be like, well, just build an office. And it's like, yeah, well, that's like $75,000, right? Because you have to do permits and walls and all the other things. So I tried to put in there some of the things that people don't think about, but that tend to make costs go higher.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? And then I'm going to make a suggestion about how to wrap up this conversation. So let's take another straw poll on 3 different possibilities. One would be leaving this as a final decision for future council. 2 would be,
Sorry, Julia, can I jump in here?
yeah,
So I sent those. I've just been making notes, listening to y'all speak, and it sounds to me that there's a few areas of agreement, and then there's different agreements on the temporary piece. But I was hoping maybe we could confirm the 3 together, which I could screen share too, but it's the leaving the final decision on permanent district offices to the new council, to investing in a robust public engagement process, could have the particulars that Maddie put in the document. And 3, sharing our research with this council and with the future council. It seemed that most people agree to those 3 things. And then the motions, I feel, is on the question of temporary offices. You know, there's the 1 in East Portland. There's 1 per district. There's Joe's suggestion of 1 in each district except District 4, but that's where more of the conversation has been.
Terry.
I agree with that. And I would move that portion of it, with one exception, of course, and I'd move Maddie's language of the preliminary stuff as well. The robust engagement process, I think, probably needs to be just generalized as such, because the intersection of this with what civic life is doing, what the neighborhood association and neighborhood associations and their coalitions are doing, all is linked together, and it's a big blurry mess. So I would say yes, engagement as to the programming of these offices and representation, that sort of thing. I don't know that it needs a budget. I don't know that it needs to be outside facilitated, just the general part of it. But for what Julia just said, I'd move that.
All right, let's state the motion more clearly and get a second, and then we'll take some more comments. Do you want to restate what you said, Julia? Let's see.
I think if Terry's making the motion.
I'll try it. Part one would be moving the preliminary language that Maddie wrote about GTAC's goals and interests and that sort of stuff, because I thought it was excellent and nuanced and very good. Second, that it be left to the future council for permanent in-district offices. That's their decision to make. Third would be a robust community engagement process about programming in these offices prior to a permanent decision. And if there's something else, I'm forgetting it. Okay, so it'd be those 3 things.
All right, is there a second?
Zach, I'll second.
Was that Zach seconding? Okay, all right, we'll take a discussion. Juanita, sorry.
Yeah.
I cut myself off.
Yeah, I would like to offer a friendly amendment to the motion. The language about saying that the future council is going to make the final decision about district offices, I think that is already set by the language and that is already set in terms of there's going to be district offices. To what extent are there going to be new buildings? I think that we need to change that to that they are going, I like in the beginning, somebody mentioned that the future council will decide if they wanna build offices in each of the districts to do the investment for offices. Not that if it is going to be district offices, it has to be district offices because every group we have talked to, every community group, they expected a place to meet in their district. So I kind of feel uncomfortable with that language because we're basically saying that maybe the new council will decide that there's no need for district offices. I don't want to go in there.
Okay. Other comments? Zach?
Rapid fire, trying to find the raise hand. I think I might have another friendly amendment if to suggest, which would be to continue a direction of Maddie's team and facilities to continue this site kind of survey, if you will, that they're ongoing. I don't want us to be pausing the work that they've been doing in trying to identify a spot for this until January 1, 2025. Because I want, you know, to Jose's point that he made, I think, in chat, if council decides, the new council decides that they want to pursue this, there's going to be a fairly significant lag time. And they may not, you know, especially those who are in District 3 and 4, they may not see the kind of end of that process.
So how would you phrase that to incorporate it in the motion, do you think?
Oh, go ahead. Somebody was speaking.
I don't see any other hands right now. Oh, I do see Terry.
I'll try it. I mean, I think that's a friendly enough amendment that I would accept it. And I would phrase it that, you know, while we're having this robust engagement process about programming, that facility staff would continue to provide options into that process. Is that enough, Zach?
Yeah, I think to trying to think of like the right way of saying it, but basically that facility direction for facilities to continue its yeah,
I think
that's fine.
I think Destiny just nailed it in the chat. So take Destiny's language.
It says, she suggests saying, continue ongoing facilities research and scoping of in-district office work. And Maddie has a comment.
Yeah, I would just say we're nearing the end of the road of what we can do to provide assistance without a clearer program. And so I wrote up an offer in which we continue working with you, but that's in relation to funding for a program, you know, research in a program. Otherwise, it's us just going out to visit sites and we still don't really have an answer of like, does this hit the target or not? So I guess I would just caution that my offer of support is conditioned on having somebody who is available to provide us with more definitive direction about what options we're supposed to be looking at and providing. Right now, we're kind of working on our own, just in the dark, trying to find things to phrase up options for other people about where to go. And I think we've probably overturned the last rock that we could find to do this. And then we have our options. Those are the options.
So Zach is suggesting a phrase to ensure responsiveness to direction of the future council. Do you think that encompasses what you just said, Maddie? Would they be determining the programming?
Mm-mm.
That would come from staff, right?
I think it's the council, and I think somebody needs to be out there doing research. The GTAC could continue that research this year as it has done through the fall, and then provide that research to the existing or future council And, you know, once that research is done, it will be a lot easier, you know, facilities could tag along with that research to say, okay, well, this is the cost of this is the risks of that, this is how this would time out. So we can tag along, but we are not the identifiers of the programming right now. That is not our authority. Our authority is to build something, right? And we don't have guidance on what to build right now because there's nobody leading the programming effort. And that's research, I think, in the community.
I was
Okay.
trying to continue Destiny's comment.
Yeah, okay. So we're getting close to running out of time. Juanita?
Yes, just very quickly, I want to know Mari, when you say program, you don't know the program. What do you mean by that? Are you meaning that when you're talking about program, does that mean that these district offices are going to be providing services? I'm just curious. If you can clarify that to me, because I don't.
We don't know. We've heard everything under the sun, right? They're going to be providing services. It's going to be their primary meeting location. It's where they're going to host community meetings. No, that's not it. They're going to just post up periodically, and then it will be a place that represents the district. Everybody's expectations of these are all across the docket. And so this is where I think your first step is community engagement. Like, what problem are you trying to solve? Once and that might vary from district to district. Once you've defined that, if there's a physical gap that's missing, the next step always is working with an architect and a community engagement group to say, okay, what is the program, right? If we're missing investment holistically on the east side, is that actually an acreage, right? And we're going in and we're building a playground and we're building a community gathering space. So the architectural process defines the program, but you can't even launch that process till you know what problem you're trying to solve. And those very differ from district to district.
Thank you for the clarification, because then that makes our decision even easier, because all we're talking about is, are we recommending that the buildings that the next council decides if they're going to build something? That's all. But we can work in defining the infrastructure in terms of organization for community engagement. And I agree that feedback has to come from the local community from each of the districts, who can identify their own needs and their own problems. And then that will be the feeding that will go back to determine, do we need a building or not? So I just want to make sure that the motion articulates that.
Okay, let's quickly hear from Destiny and Terry, and then we'll see if we're ready to vote.
I put my ending question in chat. Are we then not going to make a recommendation on set offices starting January 1st?
That's what I was going to speak to. And I'm trying to help Juliet out here too. We can call the question on my motion, which was sort of preliminary consensus, as Julia had described it. Mm-hmm. And then I would make another motion that says, you know, the option number 2, the lo-fi pop-up, minimal-ish option in each of the districts. That would be my follow-up motion, where I know that's not consensus, but just to throw it out there and move the ball on. So that's where I am.
You want to call the question on the first motion?
Yeah, basically at this point, I think we have a good understanding, and I think we're all generally there. Yeah. So yeah.
Okay. So let's see a show of hands to call the question.
I'm going to actually do roll call, if you don't mind, because that's how our bylaws are for this type of decision. Okay. I'm not going to restate it, and then we'll do a second motion on the temporary office or offices.
Okay.
Amy.
This is to call the question.
Yes.
This is on the motion itself.
Oh, can you restate the motion? Sorry.
I think that's you, Terry.
Yeah, I'll try again. It is, what is it?
Here, I have part of it. Sorry, I should have been writing this down. So it would be leaving the final decision to a future council. It would be providing robust resources to community engagement and sharing GTAC's ongoing research with council.
I guess all the preliminary language that was part of Maddie's memo proposal. So that's the part of it.
And yeah, okay.
Okay.
Is that clear enough?
I have a question.
Yeah, that's.
Isn't this what we already voted on last time? I mean, this doesn't give any options. You're just saying the future is going to decide without saying anything else.
Well, the next motion will be on what
But if
happens.
it fails, then this will just stand with nothing. So which is exactly what we voted last time not to do.
Do you want to propose an amendment? I also just, we're a bit over, so.
Yeah, I just,
Well, I guess, I mean, you're right. I'm just trying to move the ball along, like with all the stuff that we agree on, we can
No.
pass.
then we
And
should
then-
just vote on the next motion, not on this one.
Well, okay, but then if you want me to attach the next motion to this one, then it is the language for option 2, which is the low cost ish offices in all 4 districts.
Wait, I just want to reorient our conversation. So the main thing is that we need to make a recommendation to council that they stop there, or that they change so that's part of this. Is that part of what we're recommending? Okay, my apologies. I think I vote. Or can you?
Yeah, my understanding is that we're voting to tell the council about the law that they approved, that is too earlier to try to be making those decisions. That we need time to do the research. That we want to make sure that we have the time to do the research about decisions about the function of all district offices. But for now, that they can do temporary offices, but the new council will decide if they're going to do actual construction. I think that's the question, the construction, because of the fact that the cost of constructing buildings is too much and we cannot afford it. And the security. That's my understanding. That is all we're voting on. No?
I don't think it's necessarily construction. I mean,
It's
it could be.
Temporary offices starting January 1st in district.
Temporary office, yeah.
Yes, but that's what we're saying. Are we going to support the current resolution that council has set for facilities to create offices in districts? And our options are temporary offices in all districts or an office in East District 1. Those were the conversations we were having earlier, and we haven't made a motion on that part because we haven't reached consensus.
Is there a way that somebody, Julia, is there a way that you can type like a draft and post it so we can all see it and then we can start adding?
Yeah, I honestly,
Solid.
it's the original option 2 that Terry's making with some more specific language from Maddie's document that I don't have time to type. I mean, I don't think you'd have time to kind of do it all, but we could make a document after this that kind of fleshes out our original option 2 that I just put in the chat with some of Maddie's language, which would be a proposal to, again, this is just for GTAC's consideration. Destiny's noting that the alternative would be this same exact motion, except instead of lo-fi pop-up in each district by January 1st, 2025, it would be one space that can accommodate all of the counselors in East Portland by January 1st. That's really the kind of, seems like there's agreement on everything else. So we should probably, I assume maybe Destiny or Jose is prepared to make that motion if option 2 is not successful. Does
Thank
that
you
seem
so
accurate?
much.
Uh-huh.
Thank you so much for that. That I'm fine with that. Thank you. Then
Great.
we go ahead and vote.
Voting,
Speak.
oh, Maddie?
Go ahead.
And I do wanted to note, when I say construction, that's an all-encompassing term. It's not new facilities. Tenant improvements are construction, laying fibers, construction, walls are construction. So the other question is, I would strongly discourage uses of terms like lo-fi pop-up, because that is very open to interpretation as to what level of construction that requires, and it gets you immediately into this cost question.
Yes, I think it was with the caveat of using more similar language that you proposed in replace of lo-fi.
Yes.
Yep. Okay, can I do a roll? Sorry.
This is to that roll call, but just before we have more discussion, right before the vote, I want to clarify that the motion we're voting on right now is essentially option 2, but adding in some of Maddie's details into it. Okay, that I just want to clarify the motion immediately before we vote. I do think at GTAC we should bring up the not in District 4, but for later.
Yeah, perfect. That's exactly right, Jose. Can I call your names? Thank you. Amy,
Yes.
Destiny,
Yes.
Joe is absent. Jose,
No,
Juanita,
Yes.
Juliet,
Yes.
Lori.
She put in the chat that she had to leave, but she would
Oh.
vote for it.
Okay, we
I don't
can't do
know if that-
absentee.
Yeah. I don't
No
think
absentee
that's-
voting.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you. Terry,
Apologies for getting everything all muddled by trying to move things along. But yeah, I think this is, as amended, I vote yes.
Zach,
So I don't think that option 2 I can approve, because we've really not answered the main question of the lo-fi pop-up. And I think if we're investing in resources, then we should be investing in resources in a much more cost.
thank you. So 5 yeses, which is a majority of this subcommittee, so it passes.
Okay, so that approves the motion, or that was calling the question, Julia?
That's approved.
I
I thought you all were voting on the motion, but if you weren't,
No,
please do
that's
it.
good. Just checking. I'm fine
Okay.
with that. Okay, next slide, please. The meeting, sorry, I'm having technical difficulties. The meeting recording will be posted on the committee's website. Tomorrow is the meeting to scope recommended improvements to community engagement. Monday is the next voter education subcommittee meeting. The GTAC will meet on March 13th, when this subcommittee will report on onboarding recommendations, our upcoming community engagement plan, and today's recommendation. Our next subcommittee meeting is March 28th. Before that, we will work on our engagement plan, including 3 community listening sessions. Next slide, please. I want to thank everyone for hammering that one out today, and
Excuse
thank you so
me.
much for your focus. We are adjourned.
Are we having a time to meet to review the letter, to do the final letter?
No, it has to go to GTAC first.
No, but I mean, yes. But are we going to write that letter then? Oh, I see. Thank you. But who's going to do the draft? Are we going to have access to the draft after this, before it's sent to GTAC?
Juanita, there's no letter until GTAC says that we should make a
Oh,
letter.
I apologize. Okay, so but it's still, we're going to do something to present to GTAC. Are we going to be able to see that before it's presented to GTAC? I would like to see the draft or the whatever we come up with.
Thanks, Maddie.
Who's working on
Thanks,
it?
Maddie. It would be the co-chairs would do it. So
Okay.
I'll leave it to them to say when they could have it done by.
I mean, you will have it a week before the meeting. It'll be part of the slide deck and probably be part of the materials as part of the upcoming meeting materials, like always. So if you have a comment, you could reply to that email and let us know.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, just because this discussion was very, we got into really kind of confusing areas. And obviously we were also some of us, I was confused a little bit in some points. So I want to make sure that the final result of the discussion that I agree with it too. I'm sorry about that, but I mean,
No, I understand, Juanita. That's why I piped in at the end trying to say it again right before the vote, because I was also confused as to where we landed.
thank
Thank
you,
you.
Jose.
Me too.
Thank you, guys.